Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something you do about 20,000 times a day without even thinking about it: breathing. We're going to follow the incredible journey of a single breath, all the way from the air around you to the very cells inside your body.
Yeah, really think about that. 20,000 times every single day. But have you ever stopped to wonder what's really going on? We're going to follow a single breath on its remarkable journey, kind of like a high-speed delivery service, and trace its path all the way to the fuel that powers your every move. So, let's get started.
So where does it all kick off? Well, our journey starts the second that air enters your nose or your mouth. From that point on, it's a non-stop trip, heading deep down into your chest and towards your lungs.
This slide gives us a fantastic roadmap of the entire system. The best way to visualize it is like an upside-down tree. The windpipe is the main trunk, which then branches out into smaller and smaller airways, reaching deep inside the lungs. And this slide breaks that whole pathway down into 5 key stages. So, air comes in through your mouth or nose, travels down the trachea, splits into the 2 bronchi, then branches into even smaller bronchioles, and finally it reaches its destination, the alveoli.
Let's take a quick look at the trachea. You probably know it as the windpipe. As you can see, it's the main highway for air coming down from your throat. And right at its base, this single tube splits into 2, which is the beginning of that whole branching network inside your lungs.
Okay, so now that we've mapped out the route the air takes, let's get into the mechanics. How does your body actually pull air in and push it out? It's not magic, it's a beautifully coordinated effort from your muscles. Here's the fascinating part. Your lungs don't have any muscles of their own. Breathing is actually powered by the muscles around them. When you inhale, your intercostal muscles between your ribs contract, pulling your rib cage up and out. At the exact same time, the diaphragm, that big dome-shaped muscle under your lungs, contracts and flattens out. All this creates more space in your chest, and air just rushes in to fill it. Exhaling is just the opposite. The muscles relax, the space shrinks, and air gets pushed back out. Simple as that. We've reached the final destination, and honestly, this is where the real magic happens. At the very end of the tiniest bronchioles, you've got millions of these tiny bubble-like air sacs called alveoli. And as this slide shows so well, they're just wrapped in this dense web of capillaries, which are the smallest blood vessels in your body.
And what's brilliant is how these alveoli are perfectly designed for their job. They have incredibly thin walls, just 1 cell thick. They have a massive total surface area all packed together, and they're in direct contact with the blood supply. These 3 features make them unbelievably efficient at swapping gases.
Now, the process that makes this whole exchange possible is called diffusion. It's a really basic principle in physics. Gases will always move from an area where there's a lot of them to an area where there's less of them. It's this simple movement, driven by what's called a pressure gradient, that gets oxygen into your blood and gets carbon dioxide out.
And this slide shows that process in action perfectly. The air you just inhaled is packed with oxygen, right? So there's a high concentration in the alveoli. Your blood, which just got back from delivering oxygen to your body, is low in oxygen. So naturally, oxygen just diffuses straight into the blood. At the exact same time, your blood is carrying a lot of carbon dioxide waste, so it diffuses out into the alveoli to be exhaled. A simple but absolutely vital trade.
Okay, so what happens when we really push this system? Let's take a look at how your breathing changes when you're working out, when your body's demand for oxygen just skyrockets. When you are really pushing yourself, your main breathing muscles just aren't enough. So your body calls in reinforcements. It recruits what are called accessory muscles in your chest, like your pectorals, and even muscles in your neck, like the sternocleidomastoid. They help pull the rib cage up and out even further, creating the maximum possible space for faster, deeper breaths.
And we can actually measure these changes using a spirometer trace, just like the one you see here. This graph might look a little complex, but it's really just a picture of the amount of air moving in and out of your lungs. See those smaller, regular waves? That's just your normal breathing at rest. That much larger wave? That shows a really deep breath. That normal, resting breath is called your tidal volume. It's simply the amount of air you move with each breath when you're not really exerting yourself. But as you can imagine, the moment you start exercising, your tidal volume increases dramatically to get more of that precious oxygen to your working muscles.
And that huge peak on the graph, well, that represents your vital capacity. This is the absolute maximum amount of air you can forcefully inhale and exhale in one single breath. It's a key indicator of your lung function and your overall respiratory fitness. So, we've seen how air gets in and how the oxygen gets used. But what's the actual difference in what the air is made of when we inhale versus when we exhale? Well, the numbers tell a really clear story. On the way in, the air is about 79% nitrogen, which our body doesn't really do anything with. Then there's the crucial 21% oxygen. And notice that tiny little sliver of carbon dioxide, just 0.04%. This is the fuel your body is about to use. Now look at the air on the way out. The nitrogen is exactly the same, but the oxygen has dropped from 21% all the way down to 16%. And the carbon dioxide? Whoa, it has skyrocketed from almost nothing to 4%. That 5% drop in oxygen and that massive jump in CO2 is the proof. It's direct evidence of the gas exchange we've been talking about.
Okay, we have followed the entire journey, so now let's make sure it all sticks. We'll do a couple of quick questions to test our understanding. All right, first question. We mentioned this right at the start of the air's journey. Which of these parts is also known as the windpipe? Go ahead and take a second to think about it.
And the correct answer is B, trachea. Yep, that's the main highway carrying air from your throat down towards your lungs before it splits into the bronchi. Well done if you got that.
Okay, next question. This one requires a bit more thought. Let's think back to diffusion at the alveoli. Why is there about 5% less oxygen in the air we breathe out? Where did it go? The answer is that the missing oxygen didn't just disappear, it was used. It diffused into your blood, was delivered to your muscles and organs, and fueled the process that creates energy. And the carbon dioxide you breathe out is the waste product from that exact process. It's the fundamental exchange that keeps every single one of us going.
And that brings us to our final thought. You know, breathing might be automatic, but it doesn't have to be passive. Now that you understand the mechanics, from your diaphragm to your vital capacity, you have the knowledge to start controlling it. So the real question is, how can you use this knowledge to train this incredible system and improve your own performance? That's something to think about. Thanks for watching.